Greetings, great things. It is Q Talks once again, and today's episode of Black Swan Theory podcast, we will be discussing when you outgrow who you used to be. So, as always, I have some notes. If you catch me glancing down, that is what I am referring to. Okay? But I think this topic is so important because many of us will resonate with this. I think we're in quite transformational times in the world. So there's a lot of internal shifts happening that are kind of mirroring the way the world itself is shifting. So it's very natural that a lot of people will be feeling like they're outgrowing who they used to be, right? Or what they used to resonate with. And I'm here to discuss that with you, especially because it's sometimes hard to put words to this feeling. Outgrowing your old self doesn't always feel like success. It often feels like loss. It feels like you don't know who you are anymore, but you're also not quite this new version of yourself. It can sometimes feel very lonely, not exciting, okay? It can show up in different ways. It can show up in your friendships just not feeling the same, hitting the same, certain habits that you used to indulge in or that you used to love. You find yourself outgrowing these habits or not enjoying them anymore. People around you may tell you that you have changed or that you seem different, you don't seem the same. And as I said before, you can find yourself almost having a bit of an identity crisis, feeling stuck or feeling lost in between two versions of yourself, right? So when we grow, our values grow, our values change as well. And when we become aware of these changes in our values, the type of things that we tolerate also shift. We don't find ourselves having the same standards in certain areas of life. So it means that the experiences that we're open to, right, and that we're willing to tolerate, to accept, they change. We don't keep up the same roles that we might have kept up before. So the ways that we used to look at ourselves, the things that we used to do, the ways that we used to show up, we find this desire to shift that, to show up differently, to express yourself differently, right? None of this means that you're abandoning your past or that you're abandoning who you used to be. You're just evolving past what often is a state of survival. Because let's be real, for many of us, we have operated in a state of survival since we, you know, hatched from our egg, and I'm using that metaphorically, since we came out of since we came out of either, actually our mother's womb or just out of like our own shell for people to see, it's a black swan. And they've not really seen that before. They don't really know how to deal with that. They don't really know what to do with that. So us wanting to make other people comfortable, make ourselves feel comfortable and not point out how different we are, found so many ways to adapt, right? To shrink, to survive. But we are no longer in that phase. I am no longer in that phase. And I hope that you are no longer in that phase or you're coming out of that phase, right? For me personally, outgrowing who I used to be, um, there are a lot of moments where I realized, I can't really go back to who I was before. But as I mentioned in my previous podcast episode, Born Too Old, there was a certain age that I got to when I just had to accept the fact that things were gonna be the way that they are. There's nothing that I can do to go back to change the past because I am not getting younger, right? I'm getting older. So I'm moving forward. And in order for me to move forward in the direction that I want to go in, I need to be able to accept and allow the past to be what it is, right? And not to try to re-emulate that. Because a lot of times, especially when we have had difficult past or difficult childhood, traumatic experiences, or just things that were unfair, unmet needs, we can get stuck in a place of trying to fix that, trying to recreate that, and trying to accommodate for these things that we still want, yet that's the past. Really, what we want to focus on is where we're going and what we want from the future, because we are going to get our needs met, right? But it gets tricky when you put all of that on yourself, when you start to become afraid that the future and, where you're headed isn't going to make things better. So you start thinking that all the responsibility lies on you now in this moment to make things better. When you outgrow this old version of yourself, you can feel guilty for changing because, you change your mind, you change your perspective. There are certain things maybe that in the past you've said, and then now you're contradicting those things. So this can cause you to feel some guilt to the past version of yourself, or the past version of yourself that people know. You feel like you owe yourself or you owe others to stay the same. But as we know, and if you don't know, you better get to know, this quote: the only constant in life is change. All right? That is the only constant, the only thing that is promised, the only thing that is certain is that change will occur. So, knowing that, right? And wanting to be actively responsible and in tune with the changes that we are making, we honor and recognize the past, right? Because that version of ourselves served the version of ourselves that sits here today. But we don't feel guilt. We don't feel attachment. We don't feel like we have to go back, because change is to be expected. It is natural. It is normal, and it is necessary. Don't ever let anybody make you feel guilty, whether that's yourself or the people around you, for changing. Because if you weren't changing, right, if you weren't shifting, that means you're not alive. That means you're not here. Everything changes. Everything changes. Okay? So if everything changes, then so can you, especially when you know you're doing that for the better. Growth can often, and leading on from that, this growth can often cause you to have to separate from environments where your growth is not honored or your growth is not encouraged or your growth is not accepted or not allowed, it's okay to separate, because again, when we know that change and growth are necessary parts of life, and we find ourselves in situations that are stagnating us, that are holding us back, right? Or around people that are stagnating us and holding us back, it doesn't mean change won't happen. It just means the type of change that is most likely to happen if we remain in those environments and we remain around those people is change that is going to be negative, change that is going to be detrimental, change that is not going to be in line with the desired outcome, with what we are seeking out of this life. So, personally, I have walked away from friendships, walked away from certain dynamics with family members, walked away from certain ways that I used to dress, the way that I used to present myself. Why? Because when you know, again, what you want and what kind of standard that you now align with, you know what doesn't fit in with that. And you don't hang on to those things just because that used to be you. You allow your identity to shift and to grow. Really and truly, what I want you guys to take away from this message, if you come across this, right, is that outgrowing people or versions of yourself isn't betrayal, it's alignment. So, again, outgrowing people, outgrowing situations, circumstances, old versions of yourself, this isn't a form of betrayal. This is a form of alignment. This is you aligning with yourself and the life that you came here to live, right? Before growth looks like freedom, it often looks like loss. But as we know, or as you should know, or as I'm here to let you know, being a black swan means that we don't fit in environments forever. We don't shrink to stay familiar, because the right situations, the right environments, the right people meet us where we are and where we're going. I love you guys so much, and I love talking to you, and I can't wait to upload another episode for you guys next week. As always, if you have any topic suggestions or any questions, feel free to comment them, because this is an open community, right? For all of us to grow. And yeah, as always, keep shifting, keep evolving into the greatest version of yourself. And always, always remember, my beautiful black swan, that you are home here. You are always welcome here. You are always loved here. No matter how many times you shift, you change, you evolve, I will be right here to celebrate your growth with you, to celebrate who you were, to celebrate who you are, and to celebrate who you are becoming. I love you guys so much. I hope this video comes out well. I am using a mic for the first time, so let's see. And I'll see you in the next topic. Bye bye.